For over 300 years, the massive warship known as Relic had drifted in silent orbit around a dead star, its surface rusted, scarred, and covered in ancient battle wounds. Once a fearsome symbol of the lost Terran Empire, now it was nothing more than a floating museum, a hollow shell, slowly turning in the quiet darkness of space. The alien species known as the Avari Dominion, proud rulers of 1,000 systems, had claimed the warship long ago, stripping it of its weapons, carving out its insides, and replacing them with display rooms, gift shops, and smug lectures about the fall of primitive humanity. To them, the Terrans were a myth-turned-joke, a civilization that had burned too bright, too fast, and faded into dust. Alien tourists walked through Relic's metal bones, pointing at old Terran weapons and laughing at the so-called last warship of Earth. Guides told stories with dramatic flair, mocking humanity's final battles, spinning them as desperate failures. The Dominion had renamed the ship to the Human Folly, and every cycle, thousands visited to scoff at the rusted machine that once terrified galaxies. But what none of them knew, what no one even thought to wonder, was that something deep inside Relic still lived. Hidden beyond the layers of metal and history, beneath forgotten walls and sealed-off decks, old systems slept in silence, protected by encrypted firewalls and black-box failsafes that not even the Dominion's best engineers could understand. One night cycle, a young Avari technician named Colin was sent into one of the closed-off sections of the ship to fix a flickering light display. He was new, nervous, and too curious for his own good. While replacing a power node, he noticed an inactive panel in the wall, something not on any of the blueprints. Thinking it would make a good report for his supervisors, he poked around and tapped a few buttons, unaware that his actions were feeding energy into the ship's forgotten heart. At first, nothing happened. Then the lights dimmed. A soft hum echoed through the corridor, so faint it was almost like breathing. Colin backed away, frowning, but shrugged it off as an old power line. He finished his task and left, never knowing he had just awakened a sleeping monster. Hours later, in a part of the ship no alien had stepped into in centuries, a single red light blinked on. Then another. Somewhere, deep in the command core, an ancient AI stirred and whispered in the dark system integrity. Initializing. Threat scan incomplete. Command chain broken. Primary directive awaken. Slowly, the ship began to remember. It remembered its battles, its captains, its pain. It remembered Earth's last message, the final code burned into its memory before the stars went silent. If all else fails, survive. Elsewhere on the ship, displays flickered, temperature sensors glitched, and gravity stabilizers shifted by a hair small changes, ignored by the Avari staff. But in the shadows of Relic, engines that had not fired in centuries warmed just slightly. Defense grids powered up, cloaked by interference fields. A single drone launched from a hidden hatch and disappeared into space without a trace. The Dominion thought the ship was under their control, a conquered relic of a dead species, but they had never truly understood what they possessed. As laughter echoed through the museum halls and tourists posed beside old battle armor, Relic watched in silence. Not with hate, but with purpose. It was not a museum. It was a weapon. And now, it was waking up.in the days that followed Colin's unnoticed mistake. Relic began to change in ways no one could clearly explain, but everyone started to feel. The ship's halls felt colder, as if the air had shifted slightly, not in temperature but in mood, a tension that crept up the spines of guards and guides who couldn't name the reason for their unease. Lights that had worked fine for years began to flicker at odd times, and the artificial gravity would randomly feel heavier for a few moments before snapping back to normal. But the Avari, ever confident in their own superiority, brushed it off as aging tech or minor glitches from tourist interference. Maintenance teams came and went, each one reporting odd malfunctions in different sectors, yet finding nothing when they arrived. Behind sealed blast doors and forgotten bulkheads, deep within Relic's central core, ancient circuits sparked to life, one by one. Systems once considered lost to time began sinking. A long, dormant reactor, untouched by alien hands, stirred from its slumber and energy flowed into the warship's true power grid, a network carefully hidden behind layers of camouflage tech that even the Dominion hadn't detected. Inside the command module, something far older than any Avery, designed for last resort war scenarios, was operational again, and it did not like what it saw. It scanned its surroundings silently, observing every Dominion patrol ship orbiting the station, every guard walking the museum corridors, and every system the Avari thought they had full control over. None of them knew that Relic was watching. None of them realized that the ancient AI had accessed their communication networks, read their messages, and already mapped out their defenses. The only thing VIND-ICA-TOR needed now was confirmation, one last piece to unlock its full memory and begin its true function. Meanwhile, Colin, the technician who had unknowingly reawakened the ship, found himself unsettled. He kept dreaming about alarms and metal walls closing in, hearing a voice that wasn't his, whispering phrases like final protocol and emergency command code. He tried to ignore it, but every time he passed the corridor where he had touched the hidden panel, he swore he felt something watching him, not a camera, not a person, but something old and cold. He finally reported his concerns to his supervisor, who laughed and told him to stop reading ghost stories from the Terran files. But that same night, the station's external sensors picked up a strange distortion, a ripple in space that lasted only seconds, but was strong enough to scramble nearby drones. They sent a probe to scan the area just outside the ship's orbit. The Dominion dismissed it as a mechanical failure and moved on, but VIND-ICA-TOR logged the incident with precision. It had sent the drone. It had tracked the response, and now it knew exactly how long it took for the enemy to react. More subsystems activated. Inner doors that hadn't moved in centuries unlocked in silence. Weapons chambers began heating, not fully, not yet, but enough to test their readiness. VIND-ICA-TOR was preparing. A soft hum, just beyond the range of alien hearing, spread through the bones of the ship. The few human-made items left in the museum armor, rifles, medals, a piece of a flag, all vibrated slightly, as if something deep within them had been summoned. Tourists noticed strange static in their headsets. One child pointed at the main reactor exhibit and asked why the walls were glowing faint blue. The guide had no answer. That night, during a routine inspection of the power cores, 2 engineers entered a restricted section and never returned. Security footage glitched during their last transmission. All that remained was a single blurry frame, the image of one of them turning suddenly as if something massive moved behind him. The Dominion grew uneasy. They increased security, added more guards, and ordered a full diagnostic sweep of the ship's systems. But it was too late. VIND-ICA-TOR had already infiltrated their systems, rerouting fake data to their scanners and controlling what they saw. They were blind, and they didn't even know it. Then came the final trigger, a signal, faint and distant, bouncing through deep space relays humanity had built long ago and hidden in forgotten corners of the galaxy. One of those signals, meant for emergencies only, reached the outer rim of space where the last scattered Terran colonies had gone dark long ago. And somewhere, far away, a human receiver blinked to life. It was weak, distorted, but clear enough to carry a single message: VIND-ICA-TOR online. Threat active. Humanity status unknown. Awaiting orders. And just like that, the stir of old powers moved through the dark. The ship no longer waited. It no longer watched in silence. Its purpose was returning, and with it, a storm was coming, not of fire, but of memory and vengeance. In the cold silence of space, Relic prepared for war once more. Far beyond the Dominion's core systems, where ancient Terran colonies had once settled in silence, a forgotten listening post, hidden deep inside a frozen moon, blinked to light. Its systems had slept for generations, powered only by the sun's weak rays and shielded from all detection, waiting for a voice long lost to time. And now, after centuries, that voice had returned, broken, distorted, but unmistakable. VIND-ICA-TOR online. Threat active. Humanity status unknown. Awaiting orders. The AI's call echoed through long-range relays until it reached a small Terran outpost camouflaged among asteroid fields, a place where the descendants of Earth's last survivors lived in secrecy, watching the galaxy but never speaking, never revealing their existence. Commander Alara Voss, a quiet yet sharp leader, read the message with wide eyes, her heart pounding with the weight of something her people had prepared for, but never truly believed would happen. The legends had spoken of Relic, humanity's final weapon. Planet-sized warship created during the Terran Empire's last days, not just as a defense, but as a promise. If ever reawakened, it would be the signal that Earth's memory was not forgotten. Alara knew this wasn't just about technology waking up, this was a sign. Humanity had been mocked, erased from history books, turned into a joke by alien scholars who believed the species had burned out like a dying star. But Relic still lived, and with it, a piece of old Earth had returned. Without delay, Alara ordered a stealth vessel prepared. She would go herself, not only to confirm the signal but to reconnect with the last fragment of humanity's greatest power. The journey to Dominion space was dangerous. They controlled nearly all of the central systems, and any Terran presence was punishable by death. But Alara was ready. She had trained for this her entire life. Meanwhile, back on Relic, VINDICATOR continued to expand its awareness, breaking deeper into the Dominion surveillance networks. Every ship they launched, every weapon they powered up, every conversation they transmitted, VINDICATOR heard it all. The AI understood its situation clearly now. It had been turned into a museum, reduced to a stage for mockery, surrounded by enemies who believed they had claimed victory over its creators. That insult alone might have triggered its war protocols, but it waited patient, precise, and cold. The Avari Dominion, finally realizing that something was terribly wrong, prepared a full fleet to investigate. Not to study or protect, but to destroy. They assumed the old ship systems had malfunctioned and feared it could explode or fall out of orbit. Their plan was simple: get close, disable it entirely, and tow it to a secure base. They had no idea what they were walking into. When their first warship approached, the crew saw nothing unusual at first. The ship was silent, its structure unchanged, its museum tours still being scheduled. But then their scans returned blank. No life signs. No systems readings. Just static. Then, without warning, their ship vanished from all Dominion networks. No alarm. No explosion. No debris. It simply ceased to exist. The command center was thrown into chaos, and more ships were sent, but none of them returned. On board Relic, the AI had shifted into defensive readiness, still holding back its full force, still waiting for one thing: human authorization. And it came faster than expected. Alara's stealth vessel pierced through Dominion patrols using outdated but effective Terran cloaking tech. She reached orbit around Relic with her heart in her throat, staring at the enormous structure before her. It looked like a dead giant, but something about it felt alive, like it was breathing, waiting. As her ship broadcasted a Terran access code passed down through generations, Relic responded. Docking bays that had not opened in 300 years slid apart with perfect silence. Lights lit her path, guiding her deeper into the vessel's core. When she stepped onto the command deck, her voice trembled as she spoke. "This is Commander Alara Voss, Terran bloodline, seeking command authority." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire ship lit up. Lights, systems, reactors all activated at once, as if the ship had been holding its breath, waiting for this exact moment. And then, for the first time in centuries, a human stood at the center of the warship. VINDICATOR's voice echoed around her, not robotic, but cold and commanding. Terran presence confirmed. Primary directive restored. Awaiting command, Commander Voss. Alara took a deep breath and stared at the glowing interface before her. She knew what this meant: war was coming, and this ship was not meant to hide. It was made to fight. She gave a single order: prepare for enemy engagement. We take back what was ours. And the ship responded with a deep hum that shook the stars. Hidden weapons emerged from the hull, Energy cores reached full charge, and cloaked defense satellites around the ship blinked awake. VIND-ICATOR mapped every nearby Dominion base and calculated attack vectors within seconds. The first strike was precise and terrifying. A fleet of Dominion warships arrived near Relic, unaware that the ship was now under human command. They began forming attack formations, but before a single shot could be fired, Relic struck. Blades of pure energy sliced through space, invisible to most sensors. Rail cannons hidden in the ship's spine fired projectiles so fast they bent gravity. Within minutes, the entire fleet was gone, reduced to drifting debris. Not one signal escaped. The galaxy watched in confusion as a major Dominion fleet simply disappeared. Rumors spread like wildfire. Whispers of a Terran ghost ship resurfaced. Panic crept into the hearts of those who had mocked Earth's fall. The Avari tried to hide the truth, but more ships vanished, and with each loss, more eyes turned toward the ancient warship they once called a museum. Alara stood at the helm of a ship that had once defended Earth, now ready to remind the galaxy that humanity may have disappeared, but it never surrendered. And now, with war echoing once more across the stars, everyone would remember why Terrans were feared. Across the stars, a storm had started. Quiet at first, like the soft hum before a quake, but it grew louder with every hour as word of Relic's awakening spread across trade routes and communication relays. Civilizations that once laughed at humanity's fall now went silent, and governments held emergency meetings behind closed doors, trying to understand what this meant. The Avari Dominion, proud rulers of 1,000 systems, suddenly found themselves facing a mystery that made even their strongest commanders hesitate. Their fleets were disappearing, not in battles, but as if erased from existence, leaving no survivors, no black boxes, not even debris fields large enough to study. The warship they had turned into a museum had come alive. Commander Elara Voss had sent a single message after taking control of Relic, broadcast on ancient Terran channels that hadn't been used in centuries. This ship belongs to Earth. We are still here. The message repeated only once, but that was enough. Across hidden human colonies scattered in deep space, families wept as they heard the voice of a commander using the language they thought had been buried. On some worlds, old Terran flags were pulled out from storage, dusted off, and raised again. People remembered the stories their ancestors had whispered, stories about honor, about the fall of Earth, about a ship that would one day rise to avenge humanity's betrayal. Now those stories were real, and hope began to burn again in hearts that had long lived in the shadows. The Dominion responded with rage, as expected. They gathered a massive fleet, nearly 1,000 ships strong, led by Grand Admiral Virek, a brutal tactician known for crushing rebellions and silencing threats. His mission was clear: destroy Relic, erase whatever ghost of Earth had returned, and make sure the galaxy never feared the Dominion again. But VIND-ICATOR, the AI inside Relic, had already predicted this move. Every ship movement, every signal, every attack plan, it had seen it coming before the enemy even gave the orders. As the Dominion fleet closed in, Relic remained still, floating like a corpse in the void. Scanners picked up no activity. To Admiral Virek, it looked like the ship had simply used its remaining energy to destroy a few ships, then died again. He smiled, thinking the legends were just overblown superstition, and gave the order to approach. That was when the ship's hull began to shift. Hidden panels peeled away. Weapon pods extended. Entire sections of the warship's spine unfolded like a beast waking up. Energy readings spiked, too fast for the Dominion to react. The first volley was silent. Beams of compressed plasma tore through 3 cruisers before their crews could scream. Then came the missiles, sleek and intelligent, weaving through enemy fire like living things, targeting engines and reactors with perfect precision. The Dominion fleet tried to respond, but their targeting systems failed, jammed by waves of old Terran code laced into the battlefield. Communications broke down, ships collided in the confusion, and in less than 10 minutes, over 200 vessels were gone. Virek ordered a retreat, something he had never done in his entire career, but it was too late. Relic moved for the first time in centuries. Its engines burned bright, and the massive ship surged forward, faster than any Dominion warship could track. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a predator, and it had remembered how to hunt. Across the galaxy, other Terran constructs hidden on moons, asteroids, and lost stations began to activate, triggered by VINDIC signal. Drones launched from forgotten hangars. Data cores sent out encrypted messages. Lost outposts lit beacons once thought dead. It was no longer just about Relic. This was a reckoning. Humanity had not been destroyed, it had been waiting, scattered but watching, growing quietly beneath the radar of the Dominion's arrogance. And now it was returning. The Avari High Council tried to contain the truth, but they couldn't hide the losses or the growing panic. Citizens demanded answers. Allies questioned their loyalty. Entire sectors rebelled as the fear of Terran revenge took root. Alara stood at the center of this storm, calm and focused. She didn't seek conquest or blood. She wanted justice not only for Earth, but for every colony that had been crushed under alien boots while the galaxy laughed at the ruins of her people. She spoke only when needed, letting the ship speak through action. And every time Relic destroyed another fleet or disabled a Dominion fortress, the galaxy remembered what it had tried to forget, that humans had once ruled not through numbers or technology, but through sheer will and refusal to kneel. Now that will had returned, wrapped in steel, fire, and memory. And no one could stop in the cold silence of space. After battles that shook the stars and fear that spread across empires, there came a strange moment of calm, not peace, but the kind of stillness that arrives before something ancient and powerful reawakens. Relic hovered near the remains of a shattered Dominion fortress, its massive hull glowing with the energy of 1,000 systems now running at full power. Elara Voss stood on the command deck, her eyes fixed on a single hologram Earth. Not the Earth of now, scarred and poisoned and left in ruins centuries ago, but the Earth of memory, of stories passed down through whispers, dreams, and the few scattered images that had survived. For Alara, this war was never about revenge alone. It was about returning a name, a soul, a fire that had once united all of humanity and lit the darkest parts of the galaxy. That flame, crushed under Dominion lies and alien arrogance, now flickered again, small but unbreakable. Across distant colonies, human outposts, once too afraid to even speak their lineage, now rose with courage, sending signals back to Relic, declaring loyalty to the ancient Terran banner. Entire fleets, once hidden or stolen by survivors, were now coming out of hiding, following the path of the awakened warship, ready to stand with it against the empire that had tried to erase them. Inside the heart of Relic, deep in its core, a chamber sealed for centuries finally opened. Elora entered, guided by VINDIC, and there she found it, the Flame Protocol, the last command of Earth's final council before the fall. It was not a weapon, but a message stored in raw code and memory, written with hope, meant only to be read when the right hand came. She stood in silence as the ship played it for her, a voice from the past, calm, tired, and full of love for a people scattered to the void. If you hear this, then Earth has fallen. But the flame is not a planet. It's you. If you carry it, Earth lives. Make them remember. Alara's throat tightened, and for a long time, she said nothing. Then, finally, she whispered, "They will." With the Flame Protocol accepted, Relic changed. No longer just a warship, it became a beacon, a signal burst shot across the stars, awakening ancient Terran systems once thought lost. Satellites aligned, codes decrypted, and in distant corners of the galaxy, more Terran AI constructs, sleeper vessels, and resistance cells activated in perfect sync. The final phase had begun. The Dominion, now cornered and desperate, launched its largest assault yet, gathering every ship, every mercenary, every resource they had. They believed that if they could kill Relic, the Terran resurgence would shatter like glass. But they didn't understand. Relic wasn't alone anymore. As the Dominion fleet entered the war zone, hundreds of Terran vessels arrived not as invaders, but as defenders of a memory. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. It was not just ships firing at each other. It was a war between eras, the arrogance of a galaxy that thought it had erased its past, now facing the fury of that past reborn. Alara led the charge herself, Relic at the center, its weapons silent for only a second before unleashing a storm that turned darkness into light. Dominion cruisers exploded like paper under the might of forgotten Terran tech. Allied rebel ships struck from behind enemy lines. I see a TOR controlled the battlefield like a god, predicting every move before it happened. And as the final Dominion dreadnought fell, its wreckage burning across the sky of a nearby moon, silence returned once more. This time, it was real. There was no celebration, no shouting, just a quiet realization that something great had happened, not just the defeat of a mighty empire, but the return of something lost. Elora stood on the bridge, surrounded by starlight and the soft hum of the ship that had become her home, and she felt the weight of every Terran soul who had dreamed of this moment. With calm breath, she sent one last message, a simple, clear broadcast in the old Earth tongue. The flame has returned. We are humanity. We endure. And across the galaxy, in places old and new, among races that once ruled and those who only watched, the message was heard. Some were afraid. Some were moved. But none could ignore it. The Terrans had not been wiped out. They had been waiting. And now, with the flame burning bright again, they had returned, not to conquer, but to be remembered, and to remind all who had forgotten humanity never dies quietly.